Ooh, another episode of My Adventures with Superman is here, and I am here, Vactor, with my super host, Shaw. Shaw, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. How you guys doing?
Super Shaw! We're talking about episode 4 of season 2, Two Lanes Diverged. Two! So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And Shaw, you and I had a wonderful chat last week about the first season of My Adventures with Superman. So if anybody's interested, go check that out in the feed here on This Comic Cooks. But we're almost at the halfway point, if you can believe it, Shaw. No, wait, I'm sorry. This is the halfway point. This episode is the halfway point in the season already. We've got halfway through, and we have not seen Supergirl yet. She was in the teaser, Shaw. She was in the poster. We still haven't got her yet.
So there's only 8 episodes this season?
Yeah. Just like Acolyte's 8 also, right?
Okay. Can I tell you how happy that makes me about the Adventures with Superman?
8 seems like the new 24, Shaw. Remember we had a conversation recently about how long these seasons are with current television. 8 seems to be the current norm for these.
Well, then let's talk about this. Don't you think that this episode felt a little bit like filler? Like the overarching story that they sort of explained is that Kara Zor-El is out there, right? And Superman has this beacon, and he keeps wanting to talk to Lois. And he's tried, I would say, every episode to talk to her about this, and she doesn't want to talk about it. Or she cuts off the phone. She's doing her own thing. She's got her own stuff with her dad going on right now. So, but it seems like they keep pushing that. And this episode felt like there wasn't much, progression of plot. At the end of it, it's pretty much the same as where it started. An estranged relationship between Lois and her dad. Clark having to do his own thing. Lex Luthor becoming more and more of a threat. All of that was already established in a previous episode. There's nothing this episode did except act as a filler. And if there's only 8 episodes in the season, this was a waste.
I think this one, we had some comments on our filler short that we put out on, was it this channel or was it the Star Wars channel? No, it's the Star Wars channel. I'm sorry. On our Star Wars channel, Trust in the Force, we had some comments on our filler question. Basically, we said, is filler a good thing? Do we remember the days of 20 episode seasons? And some of the people who said that they enjoyed the filler episodes, their take on it was character development and spending more time with those characters rather than feeling rushed through a season.
Right.
So I think this falls into that with the Lane, Clark's, well, I should say Lois's dad, and then the Jimmy and Lex thing. Like, what is going on with Lex trying to turn people against Superman, turn the public against him? I think that was probably the main thing that we got in this one, especially with these 20-minute episodes. A lot of it is you have to really pack a lot in, and I'm wondering where does Supergirl come in? We saw at the very end of this, is that Zod? Do we think that's Zod that's floating above the planet?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. That kind of tease of that's probably going to be the last, the penultimate or the last episode in this season, I think is going to be Zod coming in. We did get a little bit of an update on Jimmy's net worth. That went down a little bit more. We got to see that. But I think it was mainly the Clark and Jimmy relationship, and then it seemed like it was strained at the end when Superman, Lex came up to him and he was like, "Hey, thanks for helping me out."
Right.
Jimmy.
I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. Yeah.
And
that
at first I was like, oh, he's just lying. But then why did Jimmy slink away? Why was he trying to hide from Superman and Jimmy? That was kind of weird to me. I was like, did he help Lex? Did he do something specifically that we don't know about?
It happened on screen. Jimmy was the one who came up. So they sort of retconned. Maybe they intended this all along, but he was Lex Luthor was one of the scientists helping Dr. Ivo when he was showcasing the parasite suit, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Before he got fused in it, when he was like doing like his like special whatever you want, like benefit, like having like the donors
where everybody got trapped
right?
in that room.
And Jimmy was like helping Lex. This is before we knew he was Lex, and was like, you know, encouraging him, hey, do your own thing, you know, you don't need this guy, like you do your own thing, like, right? And in a sense, like, yes, Jimmy is partially responsible for Lex Luthor becoming who he is, but really it's more just he believed in him, he motivated him, and but Lex was sure, you know, going to use that, especially in earshot of Superman, right? And especially knowing that Jimmy Olsen is Superman's best friend, right? Like that's established, or at least that's what Jimmy Olsen says, right?
Yeah. We do have the episode titles for the rest of the season. Most Eligible Superman, The Machine Who Would Be Empire, Olsen's 11, and The Death of Clark Kent is the final episode for season 2. So I think there is going to be some tension between Jimmy and Clark, and then Lois and her dad, and then basically the rising up of Lex and the tension between Clark or Superman and the public. So all those things I think are going to be in the background. Where does Supergirl fit into this? I'm not 100% sure, because we've seen different takes on characters and we don't know what this take on Supergirl is going to be.
Right, like she might not necessarily be all good either. She could be more like Zod in that regard.
Right. Yeah.
Plus, I think we're gonna get some Brainiac. They've been dropping teases about Brainiac and his technology and how the Kryptonians were using the Brainiac technology. So, and we saw a glimpse of him, and I think it was at the end credits scene of the first season. There was like a shot of Brainiac talking with Zod. Yeah. So I think the two of them are in cahoots. So I think we'll get some more Brainiac in there too, which would make me happy because Brainiac's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Speaking of Superman villains, in this episode we got Winslow shot.
Yeah, I have a note about that. You probably know what I'm going to say.
Winslow Shaw?
No, I said,
for those
here's
who
my
don't know
note.
the classic Toyman.
I wrote, here we go again. Exactly what I said last week. I said, we can't introduce a new character on this show without them already being an established DC Universe comic book character. Winslow Schott is the Toyman. They might not have identified him as the Toyman, but for veterans of comic book lore or who know anything about the DC Universe, or even have watched Supergirl, Jeremy Jordan played Winslow Schott or Win Schott in that show, and he was a nice version. He was the son of the Toyman, and he was not like influenced by his father. But I just was like, it could have been anybody. It didn't have to be the Toyman. It didn't have to be anybody noteworthy. That was so necessary.
If they don't bring him back, like if he doesn't turn into a villain later, then I think this would be just fan service and like, oh, like the Leo pointing meme. I know that guy. I know the Toyman. If they do end up bringing him back, then I'll say, oh, okay, this was a setting up thing, which I will forget by the time it happens. As you saw earlier when I forgot the Jimmy thing, I've forgotten most of season 1 already. So unless it's happening in this episode, I've got way too many things I'm thinking about. But yeah, I don't know exactly the mixture that they're trying to get between old and new. I'm sure they're thinking about like, hey, can we add something to the Superman mythos? Can we add our own spin on it? It just hasn't, we're a season and a half in, and we still haven't gotten, I think, a truly original character that we can say, oh, that's from My Adventures with Superman. That character specifically debuted in there, and that's where they introduced them, pull them from this and then put them in the comics, like they did Harley Quinn, like we talked about, like they did Livewire. So we'll see what happens, Shoff. But yeah, this episode overall, to me, it was more of like, let's see what happens next week. If this was a binge, I wouldn't even think about this. Like if we had all the episodes and we were going back to back to back, I probably wouldn't even think about this one. But since we're doing it week to week and we're specifically focusing on this episode, it felt like there wasn't a whole lot to latch on to and to say, oh yeah, I loved this part of the episode, or this was a great thing. Really the only thing specifically that I really liked in this one was the Clark and Jimmy going to this expo or whatever, and Clark's dressed in like the casual clothes. He's got the turtleneck on, and Jimmy's in his suit. That little thing that they did, and then they had that scene where they're floating, and then I love you. Like I liked
that little bromance moment. That was nice. That was pretty endearing. Yeah.
But I would say everything else, it was like, man, where's Supergirl? I'm waiting for that to happen. And I'm also, because we have this prior knowledge of Lex Luthor and the relationship there, it's like, when is he going to be Lex Luthor? Like now we're waiting. Me and you are kind of like, hey, I already know what's going to happen. Can we just get to that? Can we get to the point where he's Lex Luthor, where he's the big bad villain? It's very similar to like when you and I watch an origin story for a character that we already know and love. Let's say Batman, Superman, Spider-Man. If a new movie comes out, we've gotten to the point now in 2024 where these studios are skipping the origin stories because they're like, hey, the audience already knows. For the most part, the character's been around for 90 years, whatever it is. I think Lex Luthor's kind of the same way. He's so popular, and he is the Superman villain. We don't necessarily need a backstory. It's like, we know that he's Lex Luthor. Kind of like in the Harley Quinn show, they just introduce him and he's Lex Luthor. Like he's already voiced by Giancarlo Esposito. Also
that's right. Yeah.
Great thing. But yeah, I think in this one, Shoff, I'm with you. I feel like it was almost spinning its wheels. Like just kind of, we're waiting for them to get going. We're waiting for them to rev up. And halfway through the season, man, I kind of wish it was a little bit, I wish the revving was a little bit louder. Like I wish it was like we were already halfway through the race, rather than, I still feel like we're in the starting blocks. Like I still feel like this season hasn't really gotten going yet. So
yeah,
hopefully next week.
The other issue I had with the episode was just the decision to have, so Jimmy was invited to be a keynote speaker. And if you know anything about like these kind of conferences, the keynote is the main like panel. That's the one everyone tunes in for. There's a bunch of other stuff, but like the keynote is the main one, the main conversation. And to me, it seems really unlikely that he would be invited to a keynote but not know what the topic was. Like to him, it seemed like he was surprised that Lex brought up the behind on the back wall was the Superman problem or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, come on, you don't get invited to be the keynote speaker, and then you're not the one submitting your PowerPoint deck. Like it's not your footage. You're the one speaking, right? Like unless he was just invited as a guest. To me, it seemed like he was invited to be a speaker.
The way that I interpreted that was Lex conning him, basically not giving him information and being like, he wanted to, just the way he was speaking, the way he was talking to Jimmy, it felt like I pulled one over on you. Like I pulled a fast one on you. And that was just the way I felt when I was watching it. But yeah, I agree with you. Definitely. If somebody is a guest, also it felt like kind of fast, like almost he got invited that day to the conference. And he put on his clothes and he was there. You're going to be weeks, months in advance. You're going to know about it if you're the main speaker at one of these conferences. So yeah, I agree with you on that. Also, Shoff, before we close out, your favorite, Chris Parnell as Deathstroke. There was a lot. he's been given a ton of screen time. That screen time that we could be focusing on an original character.
Yeah.
To your point. So I'm not sure did Chris Parnell have a great relationship with the casting director, or did he pull some strings behind the scenes? Because he's not a great Deathstroke. He's not a great Slade Wilson. So I love his voice.
And they've not even referred to him as Deathstroke yet.
Right.
Never was. He's just Agent Wilson.
Right. At least he got the mask this time, because before we've seen him without the mask so much, it's like, man, give me the mask. So yeah, I just don't know what exactly they're trying to do with that character. He has not. I think that's been the biggest miss for me in this season or the series so far. Is
terrible
Deathstroke.
Casting.
All right, well, let's hear your thoughts on My Adventures with Superman. We're halfway through this second season. Do you think that they need to pick up the pace, or is it kind of moving along good for you? Like, is this they're building, and you're satisfied week to week? I want to know in the comments down below. Shoff and I will be here next week to talk about, like I said, episode 5, Most Eligible Superman. So we'll see. Maybe Clark gets a Tinder account. He gets to go on some dates and see what's going on.
Real quick question for the comments section.
Yes.
This is for our listeners. Is General Lane a good dad or a bad dad? Is he a good dad or bad dad?
Yeah, let's hear it. Let's hear it in the comments down below. Like I said, check out our previous episodes here on This Comic Cooks, or if you're interested in Ultimate Spider-Man or Power Rangers The Return, we've been doing those comic book reviews, so check out all of our previous episodes. But we love having you here on This Comic Cooks.